Reagan, good to see you again. That was my first time in like a media scrum on the other side. I got to the White House. They put me on the list to be credentialed to go out to the lawn. And then we just stood outside there on the palm doors, they call it. And I was like standing between you and Lindsey Keith. And I was like, is this how it always goes? Because that was like, I don't know. I sort of didn't know what to expect in terms of, it was not the most orderly thing in the world. And I've been putting a lot of clips on social media to show everybody what it was like to get in. But how was that in terms of attended events? I got the sense that a lot of the media really wanted to be there.
Yes. Well, first of all, it's always like that. It's always chaotic. The biggest difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration is just the amount of reporters attending every event. Almost every event that I have attended under the Trump administration has been packed like that, shoulder to shoulder, trying to push to get to the front. And then I don't know if you caught this perch, Sean, but once you get through those palm room doors, it's a sprint to try to get the best position. And so I hit a jog as soon as the wranglers tell me, that's the White House officials that, wrangle the press. As soon as they say you're clear, I'm running. I'm trying to pass out Caitlin Collins, give an elbow to Peter Doocy to try to get close to Trump. It is so competitive. And it's physical, too.
I thought I found a good spot, Reagan, right? And then one of the wranglers comes over and she goes, Mr. Spicer, you're going to have to move behind one of these ropes. And I'm like, oh, it's already so crowded. And she's like, I know. And I was like, that's why you guys sprint.
Yes.
Patrice, you guys this morning, I don't know if you were on air with Larry or not, but I was sort of intrigued by the little bit of whiplash from the tariff announcement yesterday. Some people were saying it wasn't as bad in terms of the market. People were and then you had a lot of Republicans. I actually thought out there really defending and making the case for Trump. What was your impression of how it rolled out yesterday?
I think it rolled out well in terms of how the White House was able to leverage their surrogates, how they're able to leverage their allies to try to get the message out. I was on a White House call yesterday where they hit kind of some of those talking points, and a lot of the people who agree with the tariffs and support them really hit the keynotes, and I've seen them popping up in the news. That said, there's a huge wave, a tidal wave of opposition coming from a lot of center-right and free market groups that certainly have, they will not abandon free trade whatsoever, regardless of, what President Trump is trying to accomplish here. And so you're going up against, you're seeing traditional conservative economists and talking heads who would typically be 100% aligned on everything. I'm thinking of your E.J. Antione at Heritage to, one of his other Heritage colleagues going back and forth on social media over this. So, if you have Republicans in Congress saying, okay, we're willing to give this a shot. Oh, and by the way, on the budget resolution, the Senate is actually trying to get that done. We need to get the tax cuts. I think that gives a little bit more coverage to those Republicans who are very much anti-tariffs right now.
Tom LoBianco, the thing that I thought was interesting in the coverage, this is the sheet, it's 8 pages long, of all the countries that President Trump addressed, okay? And here's what I was the assistant U.S. trade rep. I think I'm a free trader, okay? But here's what I still don't understand when people ask me about what's Trump doing. The EU has an average tariff rate of 39% for our all of our stuff that goes in. So some stuff's higher, some stuff lower, right? For autos, it's 10% from other things. Vietnam, 90%, Taiwan, 64%, Japan, 46%, India, 52%. By the way, that India one, I think on a lot of major products that are at 100%. Thailand, 72%, Switzerland, 61%, Indonesia, 64%. Malaysia 47. You get the gist. South. Yeah. Okay. So what I don't get is here's a president saying, okay, guys, for the longest time, you've prevented our farmers and ranchers, our service providers and our manufacturers from full access into your market. And yet we give you almost entirely full access into ours. I would think that on a bipartisan basis, people would say, okay, I don't like President Trump, but I agree with him on this. I would have thought more Democrats would have actually supported him on this. You saw the number. I was honestly blown away at the number of union workers, Teamsters, UAW. And and yet Hakeem Jeffries is coming out and saying this is recession day, not liberation day. I guess my point, Tom, to you is, as someone who's covered this from all over, I don't feel like the Trump White House was getting a fair shake yesterday in the news.
I was thinking of this in terms of, what people say, the great realignment of the parties. And, you could even go back to NAFTA in the 90s with the Democratic Leadership Council, the DLC type Democrats who are more, I guess, business oriented, right? More free market oriented. And I mean, you're reading off the list, and it reminded me, I'd forgotten about this, that, when Trump came in, when he stormed the scene in 2016, I think at Obama, they were pretty close to actually getting the Trans-Pacific partnership done.
TPP.
Yeah. And it's really gone the other way since then. And I find it fascinating as somebody who's covered this for, 2 decades now, upwards of 2 decades, to see, as you noted here, I mean, look, you have union members showing up for this. You have Democrats. I mean, there was that Senate vote where a number of Republicans moved over with the Senate Democrats to attempt to shoot down some of these tariffs. And it feels like we are still in the middle of this realigning of the parties. And
but I guess I get that part, that you're talking about the political part, Tom. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, on its face, right? If the four of us go to lunch every week and I pay, 10% of the bill, Reagan pays 10%, and Patrice pays 10%. At some point, you go, hey guys, this isn't fair. I'm picking up 70% of the bill, and I'm only a quarter, right? I mean, just in all fair, like if we were a lunch group, you would say that, right?
Yeah,
even though you're doing very well at
70% for anybody, because
right.
Unfortunately, 24 Site does not have an MX account.
You should get a Ramp card. I will hook you up with the folks at ramp.com, because that's how you should do this. And then you could have expense reports for Patrice and Reagan. But why on its face isn't that argument more salient? Why isn't the argument that says, hey, Europe's charging us 39% tariff to get into their market, and we should, at least in this case, Trump's saying we'll charge them 20. Why is that not fair?
I mean, I don't know that it's not fair having, reciprocal tariffs, doing, the, whatever tit for tat tariffs, applying that. The arguments that I've seen about this tend to be more economic, tend to be more about the impact of it. As you hinted at in the opening there, I mean, the markets are responding to this in a negative way. I saw something about Mad Money, Jim Cramer going off on it. I guess it's more of that macro response. But of course, the flip side of this, the flip to the argument here is that, if there is enough through the layoffs, through the cuts, through, working through the re-up of the 2017 tax overhaul, is that enough to counter the effects of these tariffs? And I think we don't know that yet. But I think, very classic politics. I think you have the two sides kind of punching past each other here. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it absolutely makes sense in terms of, all right, if would you say like Thailand was like 72% or something? I mean, there's
72.
You're not getting Frosted Flakes in Thailand. Okay. Like you just, right.
Jump in here.
Yeah.
And it's add on to what you're saying. I think what's different now and why it's so hard to break through this argument, let's actually have fairer trade, is inflation. It is the fact that prices are 20% higher, and people, anything they hear that suggests that prices in any way will go up, their antennas are raised to that. And so when President Trump ran, he said, on day one, I'm going to bring prices down through deregulation, through permitting reform, to drill, baby, drill. But at the same time, the left has latched on to tariffs, which, by the way, were continued under Biden. Biden continued the Trump tariffs. and it expanded on them in some ways. So it's disingenuous that the left talks about inflation as they're talking about tariffs in a negative way. They've always embraced it. I think what right now the difference is that people they're very hesitant to see anything that could potentially raise prices, and we don't know how the tariffs will affect every single market basket of goods versus very specific industries. I mean, tariffs on aluminum prices certainly will go into the prices of your Coca-Cola can, but does that mean that you're going to pay $8 for a six pack of Coke versus what the $4 that you're paying right now? That's the unknown, and I think the left and the media is exploiting that unknown to play up the fears that then drive the kind of polling that we're seeing, where people are really turned off by the idea of tariffs and, frankly, by President Trump's handling of the economy.
Yeah. I want to switch gears for a second. Cory Booker got a lot of attention this week, Reagan, for a speech. And the funny thing is, the Democratic Party, the DNC, put out a tweet that says he broke the filibuster of former Senator Strom Thurmond. So I tweeted back, the definition of a filibuster is, someone speaking on the floor nonstop in opposition to legislation. What legislation was he opposing? The answer is none. There was no legislation. It was a speech. It was a stunt. It was just, I'm going to talk for 25 hours. And I guess it was funny because he got all this credit and kudos for speaking for 24 hours. And I get it. You didn't go to the bathroom. I can't probably do that for 25 minutes. But outside of that, I don't understand what the fact. It's just he spoke for 25 hours straight. Okay, that's great. It's like a circus trick. But at the end of the day, he wasn't opposing anything. There was no legislation, no nomination that he was trying to stop or slow down. And yet the media was all fascinated by this fact. There's a whole story about how he had a roughly 4-day fast and the sneakers that he wore and how he was able not to go to the bathroom and I was like, okay, what is it that he did? I mean, it's like almost like the political equivalent of being a Kardashian. What is your claim to fame here?
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I think this is a perfect anecdote that explains how impactful Cory Booker's stunt was. It took about half of our newsroom up here, and I think we have a very talented, plugged-in newsroom, very online newsroom. Took them about halfway through his speech to even realize that he was doing it. None of us cared or realized. And I think that if I texted, my down the middle friends in the Midwest, not one of them would have any idea what he was doing on the Senate floor, talking for 25 hours about how much he hates Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And I actually think that this just shows how out of touch the Democrats are and how they are floundering, because I don't know if the Democratic base wants to hear about all the struggles that Cory Booker went through to stand for 25 hours on the Senate floor and ramble and talk and tell people about his feelings. I have to imagine that the losing party wants action. They want to see something. They want some leader to emerge. And I think it's so elitist to be, just talking about how you had to wear special sneakers and fast and go without water and whatever. And that was like the sacrifice you made just to stand for 25 hours in, the most powerful government in the world. I don't think this is a winning argument for them. And I don't think anyone cared. Maybe the CNN viewers, but I don't think any average American felt connected or impassioned by this.
But Patrice, the thing is, I will say this, as a downside, when Cory wasn't in the office because he was off giving a speech, one of his staffers got arrested for bringing a gun into the Capitol. So maybe he should spend a little more time with his staff to focus on what they're doing. But to me, the thing that was interesting is I don't know Reagan touched on this, there was this outcry from Democrats. We need more of this. And I'm like, what was this? I don't understand this. Just standing for 5 hours, you didn't accomplish anything. But that just either speaks to, one, the lack of leadership in the Democratic Party, or and the willingness to them to glom on to anybody that's willing to stand up and do anything. Because to me, that wasn't even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when she did a sit-in at Pelosi's office, it got attention and it kind of blocked them or something. You didn't stop anything in that 25 hours. Nothing changed. And so I was like, what is the Democratic Party? Why are they so excited that a guy gave a speech for 25 hours?
Well, look at their current leaders, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I think, but most people, Democrats look at Hakeem Jeffries as weak, and he's the contrast to Cory Booker. It doesn't seem to be very prominent. Doesn't seem to be coming out to do very much. And then Chuck Schumer. Well, a lot of Democrats hate that he turned his back on them with the recent continuing resolution. So now you have someone who is stepping forward, seeming like, doing the theatrics, making it seem like he's actually standing up and rallying the troops around what I'm not quite sure either. But they're looking, and I agree with Reagan, they're just looking for some point of light, someone who's a fresh face. He's not fresh. His face is not fresh, at least, but he's a voice stepping forward to, I think, fill a leadership gap.
Yeah. Tom, one of the things that has been interesting to me is how the media has covered a whole host of subjects, because anyway, but there was something that caught my eye that I was actually surprised at. Maybe I shouldn't be, but Leslie Stahl was having a conversation with one of the hostages who was released by Hamas. And this is the conversation that she had with him. So remember, this guy was taken hostage. This is the conversation. Take a look.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so.
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you, or they just didn't have food?
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
I mean, Tom, you've been a reporter for a long time. I was like, you literally, she's questioning whether or not, like, he's saying they starved me, and she's like, but did they? I mean, these are terrorists. And I'm like, are you trying to make us sympathetic to Hamas here, Leslie?
Yeah, it's something I tell college students when I've done guest speaking, is that oftentimes when you're a reporter, you're on stage as much as the people that you're interviewing. I wouldn't have done that, but I'll tell you this too. The Columbo approach works. All right. When you're having a serious conversation with somebody, probably off camera, you can get, very interesting answers that way. And it did. I mean, his response is pretty clear, right? He's like, yeah, these people are terrorists, and clearly they're torturing me, which is, I mean, that's good. That's a good answer. How she got it. I mean,
it's not like he's not like she was interrogating like a bad person. This guy was just released.
Right.
He was an innocent victim taken hostage by Hamas. And she's like, are you sure you were starved? Maybe they didn't have any to give you. Like, first of all, they took you. You're a hostage. Yeah. Like, the idea that you're actively trying to make them sympathetic. Like, maybe they really just didn't have some and they couldn't share with you. Then they could have released you. They were taking you hostage. To me, that's the insanity of that question. I couldn't believe it.
It is remarkable that it's gone on this long, because what's October 7th, 23, right? So what are we at now? Like 17 months, 18 months? Yes. Is that like, it's astounding to me. I don't know if Fetterman still has it up, but he used to have up all the photos of the remaining hostages, at his office. And, it is remarkable that this is still ongoing, that conflict. Right. I want to get back to the Cory Booker thing for a second, though, because I think it reminded me, and remember who the audience is here, right? He's not talking to, broadly to America. He's not talking broadly to, certainly not across the aisle with this. And, as you point out, it's, not about any legislation or nomination. I think this is emblematic of, what people are starting to call this, Democratic, quote unquote, Tea Party that we're seeing out there, which is this anger from the base. And it reminded me of, if you covered Republican politics, a decade ago, certainly when the Republican Tea Party was, rising and, really hitting a crest up before the 2016 election, people would talk offhand about Ted Cruz and green eggs and ham. It became symbolic. And I wonder, I mean, I didn't watch any of it myself. I was working on a project for something else, which is very interesting. I do recommend folks go to 24site.news to learn more about it. It's about Indiana's lieutenant governor. Is that it's shorthand that comes up in the base. And so I didn't see any of the Cory Booker thing, but I have seen on some of my text chains people texting clips. So I do wonder I wonder if he's running for president out of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was clear.
Interesting.
Reagan, I want to show you something that didn't get a lot of attention. I've never seen a judge do anything like this. And I'm just going to play this for you because there's this judge. His name is Van Dyke. He's on the Ninth Circuit, which is generally considered a fairly liberal circuit. They were dealing with a gun case. And this is how he approached it. Take a look.
So I share this not to supplement the factual record that we're using to decide this case. Instead, I share this because a rudimentary understanding of how guns are made, sold, used, and commonly modified makes obvious why California's proposed test and the one my colleagues are adopting today simply does not work. I'm sure I could explain all of this in writing without being accused of improper fact-finding, but it's obviously much more effective to simply show you. So let's do that now. Welcome back. To demonstrate, I'm going to start with this SIG P320 that's basically in its stock configuration. That is, this gun is basically in the same configuration it would come to you from the manufacturer and be sold to you at a retailer. This is one of the most popular handguns currently on the market in the United States. And so I'm going to use this to point out some of the essential parts of a handgun. These same parts would exist on pretty much every handgun, at least of this semi-automatic type. So let me start by pointing out a few of them. This one comes with a standard 21 round magazine. Comes from factory just like that. You can buy a similar version that comes with a 17 round magazine that fits flush. And so comes with 21 or 17 round magazine. It has a standard full-size grip. It has a factory trigger, which has a pull weight of about 7 pounds or so. Has front and rear iron sights that are used to aim the firearm. It has this little takedown lever, which is small, and you may have trouble seeing it, but we're going to talk about that some later. And that's what you use to remove the slide and disassemble the firearm. And the entire gun is designed around the automatic cycling mechanism. That is, when you pull the trigger and fire a round, right when that happens, it automatically will rack the slide back, eject the round, the spent cartridge out of the gun. It will grab a new round out of the magazine, put that round into the chamber, into the barrel, and it'll be ready to fire another round the next time you pull the trigger. So this is a semi-automatic firearm. Now, I want to use this handgun to illustrate first California and the majority's argument as applied to this obviously typical and very common handgun, and then I want to show you that the same argument would apply to other parts of the firearm and to this firearm as a whole. Now, as a reminder, California's argument, which the majority's adopted here, is that a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds is not an arm protected by the Second Amendment. So this 21 round magazine that comes from the factory or a 17 round magazine is not an arm protected by the Second Amendment. Now, California acknowledges that a magazine is necessary to make the firearm function, but they argue that because you can replace the standard magazine with one that holds fewer rounds, 10 rounds or less, then these higher capacity magazines are not an arm and thus wholly unprotected by the Second Amendment. Now, the problem with California's argument is that, as I pointed out in oral argument, the exact same argument would apply to essentially every part on this firearm, which would mean that essentially nothing on this firearm would be protected by the Second Amendment. Allow me to illustrate that using this firearm.
He goes through piece by piece of the gun and deconstructs this. Now, I know that's a bit wonky, but the bottom line is this is the first time I've ever seen a judge. He says, I could have written this, but I want to show you how this doesn't make sense. I'm going to show you that all of these pieces are interchangeable. And if that's the case, then the law doesn't make any sense. And I know it's long and wonky, but it was the first time I've ever seen a judge actually get beyond the bench and show you something that to me visually just, I got it. I watched it. And I'm like, that's exactly why this doesn't make sense. If each of these parts is interchangeable, then when you ban one, you're banning the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to note that, you mentioned that it didn't get a ton of coverage. We here at the Daily Caller, we covered it. We find these things. We dig these out. Yeah, we post it on our site.
Maybe that's where I got
courts reporter is on top of it. And so I'd heard of this story a couple days ago. As someone who struggles to go through all the legal documents and lawsuits and, opinions, I love being walked through this, having kind of like a visual. I'm a visual learner. seeing that. But I also think this is just it shows this new media trend that is, I think, beyond the White House, beyond politics, is, reaching the judicial branch, and they are learning that they have to communicate with the American people who might not fully get the time to read through these opinions and read both sides, and are going to get, biased news coverage from honestly wherever you get your news. It is going to have some sort of bias, whether it's to the right or to the left. And so I kind of welcome this from these judges to start making videos like this that can speak directly to the American people in a medium that they are using so frequently, YouTube.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.